como a Lovable vem revolucionando o desenvolvimento de software e produtos com aplicação de inteligência artificial, no episódio de hoje recebemos Sebastian Schaaf, Head de Community na Lovable, e Amanda Farago, consultora senior na Artefact, para explorar o case da Lovable sob uma perspectiva de negócios e tecnologia. Confira agora no Data Circle Podcast.
Bem-vindos e bem-vindas ao Data Circle Podcast, nosso podcast sobre AI e negócios, onde a teoria encontra a prática.
Salve, salve, membros do Data Circle, a nossa comunidade que une a tecnologia com os negócios. Estamos aqui para mais um episódio do Data Circle Podcast com um convidado super especial, o Sebastian da Lovable, e a Amanda Farago, que é a primeira vez que participa aqui com a gente. Como é um convidado internacional, a gente vai mudar para o inglês e seguir com as apresentações. Hi, Sebastian, nice to meet you. Nice to have you here on the recording.
Great to be here.
Good. And good to have you here, Amanda.
Hi, guys. Nice to meet you. I'm really happy to be here as well.
Nice, guys. So to begin with the questions and our talk here, I would like you, Sebastian, to explain a little bit about Lovable. What are its main capabilities and how it helps the businesses, and a little bit of the story of the company as well. What was the idea behind the creation of Lovable and how the business is developing? Tell a little bit of the success story of Lovable, which is a great tool, sure. And I use it a lot.
For sure. No, that's good to hear. Lovable was ideated by Anton Osika, who founded the company together with Fabian Hedin, and he originally ideated it as a side project where he built an open source repo that would turn text into code on GitHub. And overnight, got a ton of attention, a lot of stars in GitHub, and he realized that there was something there. That this idea that he had of, can we enable the 99% who cannot build software to actually build software? So the whole idea behind Lovable is that there is a ton of really, really smart, driven people that understand a problem very, very well, but they're blocked from building a solution for that problem by the fact that they can't code. And this is the one thing that Lovable wants to enable, that people who otherwise wouldn't be able to build software, would be reliant on the developer, can just turn this idea into a real product that they can either use to build on with a real team, or to take directly into production if they're able to.
That's super nice. I use Lovable a lot, and I think for our solutions, it's really a really good way to make otherwise really untangible projects tangible, right? Sometimes we think an idea of a solution, can't really put that into words or do a demo really quick, and I think Lovable really enables that.
I love that. I mean, there's multiple use cases. It's almost a bit difficult if you have a tool that could do so many things. We also have to decide, what do we want to make Lovable really good at first? But there's so many different use cases. I mean, you described one just now where you have an idea and you want to explain that idea to someone else. So one of the first use cases we saw, especially in teams and companies, was that there is people who want to communicate an idea that they otherwise would communicate in maybe a text document, a presentation. And that is not super great because it's actually hard to translate exactly what you're envisioning if you use a different format than the actual product. And what we see companies do with Lovable is that they have an idea and they just build this idea into a quick mock-up very, very quickly. It takes no time. It's usually quicker than to build a document. And then they can bring this visualization that actually works. And that's so much easier to translate what you want to do, like what your vision is, to validate something with a customer. And I mean, that's one of the first use cases that we see. But then there's also a lot of people who take this much further, where Lovable becomes an integral part of the product development and innovation process, where a PM, a designer, and a developer that would otherwise work in 3 silos, they can work on the product from the start. And everyone could just work individually in Lovable, or they collaborate. And like a PM might use the chat in Lovable. A designer might import designs, might import Figmas, might use the visual edits tool, and the dev might work in the code directly, and they can just collaborate in one platform to actually take a product from idea to production very, very quickly.
And that's super nice. And lots of times I have the feeling that we need to rely a lot on the imagination of people to understand what we are saying, and also our imagination to create something that we are not visualizing. But as soon as we have this capability of creating something so quickly and so deeply, also that you can like play with and also show and start to iterating through this creation, although it's not a ready product on the beginning, but it's already a good way to start and to show the ideas behind everything. And it makes everything much quicker. Like you go through the target in a much easier way, I would say.
100%.
Good. And how does lowering the barrier to creation impact the way business operate and innovate? And that is one of our questions that we have here for you, Sebastian.
I think it is a very good question. How does lowering the barrier change how companies innovate? I think the very obvious one is that people who are close to a problem and they have a very good understanding of the solution are now more able than ever to communicate that solution, to make it real themselves. For something simple, they might even be able to build the entire application. And the more complex it gets, the more they want to collaborate with others to, bring together the expertise that you have across an organization. But it just happens so much quicker. So we see companies just rethinking what is the talent that we need, and having much more product talent in the team, for example, that goes and can do discovery. What are the things that we should build? And then having a larger number of things that can be built simultaneously, because it just takes less time to go from 0 to 1. I think we also see that a lot of companies, they're hindered by their internal tool stack, where teams can't move as fast as they want because the systems that they use are outdated, or they can't procure the systems that they need because they're really expensive, or it just takes a long time to procure. And we have a lot of teams that help themselves automate things that can be automated, that give themselves the tech support by just building an internal tool or internal tooling that helps them operate and run faster. So both of these things, I think, impact a lot how quickly we see teams innovate and build products and ship things.
Yeah, and I think this is really even tied to the second topic that we want to discuss, which is basically now that we have the possibility of building something so much faster, and we can put our ideas into paper so quickly, how do you think the analysts and even the designers or even the engineers should adapt their skill set now that we are in a prompt first world, right? So I think the way in which the companies are working is really going to change, and so should the skills of the professionals, right?
For sure. I see two different things. I actually had the same conversation yesterday, and I think there's a lot of fear around this. I'm a techno optimist, so as long as we can think, every time there was an innovation, a lot of people were afraid and thought, okay, oh no, now we have machinery, so all craftsmanship is going to disappear and people are going to lose their jobs and livelihoods. And this didn't happen. It's that we could produce more, and people were maybe more focused on the design than the actual execution because we had a machine to help do that faster. And I think the same thing is going to happen here, where we have so many problems in this world that need someone to solve them. And we just have more tools to attack these problems now, and in a way, hopefully make the world a better place more quickly. I think one of the big shifts that we will see is that there's all these layers in an organization, right? Where You have a data analyst, for example, who compiles data, who comes up with insights to help decisions being made. And then those decisions are going to be executed by someone else and a team of other people. And with AI, what we get to is that every person can do more things faster. So I would expect the expectations to what an analyst has to contribute to a team and is able to contribute to a team to just increase with the advancements in technology, where no one will be part of a company to just compile data and share insights. But the expectation will be that these insights are turned into a prototype, for example, are turned into a product, where part of this execution work is being done by the person that comes up with the initial idea or the data around it. And that's something that we see a lot of new graduates. I mean, I've had this conversation yesterday with a friend whose daughter is struggling to find work, even though she has great education. And the competition that she faces is that she competes with people who are not just great at this discipline, in her case it's math, but are also really adept with AI tooling and technology. And like this competition can just, like hit the ground running much faster and contribute more to a company without having to be trained so much and so long. And I think that's what we'll see, that the requirements, but the average capabilities of one person joining the workforce will be much higher.
Yeah, and like going through this topic specifically, we see a lot of changes on how people work and how people deal with the challenges on the workplace. And in your opinion, which are the tools and workflows that are relevant for people to learn and to be a master so that they can stay relevant in the market?
I think it depends, obviously, on what a person's qualifications, profession, focus is. But one thing that is pretty universal, most likely, is the ability to understand understanding how software works. Because that gives you a foundation to use a lot of these tools. I don't have to understand all the code that is written anymore or be able to write all the code, but I still have to understand how a tool works. And then I can use software like Lovable to build that technology that helps me automate a certain workflow. I think that is one core thing. So I would encourage everyone to stay up to date on what technology is available and experiment as much as possible to learn how it works and how you can use it for your workflows. And otherwise, it really depends on the exact use case. So we can go into specific use cases, because if there's fewer people that attack a certain problem and individually are able to do more to solve that problem per person, then every person needs to go further. And it's probably not enough that one person understands the problem and then one person just executes the design, one person just executes the code. But everyone who's involved needs to understand that very well.
Yeah, I also think that maybe a skill that kind of will go through, regardless of the career path of the person, but will still remain relevant. And I think it might even become even more relevant than it is right now, is like the capacity to have critical reasoning, right? Because now everybody can create anything. You have access to lots of information all the time. But we as humans need to be able to tell which information or which type of visualization is relevant to the context of the scenario that I am on, right? Or to the context of the solution that I am building. So you could, not even with Lovable, but lots of tools, right? You could create several different versions of the same product, but it's you, the human, who's going to be able to look at it and say, okay, this one is the one that makes more sense to like my challenge, right? Because we see that sometimes people get kind of lost on using AI, but do not like reason on the result that they are receiving, right? And I think this is really going to become important now.
Yeah, and I think today, with those kind of tools that are available for us to use, like Lovable and all the AI tools, it's very easy to make ordinary things in terms of you can deliver very fast, but to go the step beyond, like to do really great things, you need to be there and to understand what is going on and to understand the problem, to give the piece of information for the tool that is going to make the whole difference in the end. And what are your thoughts about the human judgment, and where do you think the human judgment is irreplaceable in those kind of situations? Using Lovable, you can mention some use cases from Lovable that you are aware of, that people like made something very great because they were like experts on what they were doing and they had great ideas, and the tool maximized this kind of impact they can make.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very good question. I think I'm a bit scared to say that anything is irreplaceable because we don't know yet what technology will be able to do and where it will fall short. I think one thing that we see right now is that good judgment on what to build is super important, because when it becomes super easy to build anything, then it's also very easy to build the wrong thing. And there's a lot of things that are being built that are not going to get users and are not solving an actual problem, because that is something that people didn't think through sufficiently. So judgment on what to build and what problem to solve and what the right solution is for the problem, that's still going to be very key, I think. The other thing is good taste. AI makes it pretty easy to build decently looking applications. And in Lovable, it's very easy to build something that feels very quickly, feels very easy to ship and functions, looks good, looks clean. But if a lot of people can build, and unless AI creates extremely varied design, then it's very easy to just create the same or something similar very quickly. And human creativity and good taste will be a super strong distinguisher. And we see this today, where designers that build with Lovable, they build much more high quality solutions than a lot of other users, because they really understand what good looks like. Just like product managers or many developers that are product focused that build with Lovable, they just get the problem and they get what the solution should look like, and what they build with Lovable resembles this. And at least so far, the AI doesn't do all the thinking for us when building, but like these two decisions, like what to build and how it should look and feel, that's very much human. That drives this.
Yeah, totally agree.
100%. So as I mentioned before, it's very easy to do ordinary things. Like nowadays, it's very easy to make what everybody can do, but the step beyond, and since everybody can do lots of ordinary things, the differentiation is not by the output itself, but the good output. Like it has to be good in order to be valuable in all the scenarios.
Yeah.
Then can you pick some use case from Lovable, from your clients, and from what you already heard of, on a specific case that was good to highlight this kind of impact that Lovable does, and how can we go beyond with Lovable itself?
I think there's so many, I mentioned this before, there's so many problems that are just waiting to be solved. And somehow there hasn't been someone who managed to pick it up and develop a good solution that spread. And we're already seeing several really, really great products coming out that were developed by people who are not developers, but just knew a problem very, very well, and then managed to overcome this hurdle of building with Lovable. I think there's one that came out of Brazil, actually, and is an app to run background checks. I think it was developed by a woman for women before they go on dates, and is supposed to help them stay safe when they meet someone that they don't know, and run a background check to see if there's any kind of convictions or any red flags that they should be aware of. And that really took off because it's clearly a big problem that people were waiting for a good solution for, and now they received it by someone who knew that problem and built it with Lovable. We have other products. One of the first products that were built on Lovable was an app to help restaurants and serve customers better. So there might be so many of these solutions where it's maybe a niche industry, maybe a niche focus area that no one found it valuable enough to invest a lot of engineering time into building this, and that can now be built quicker. And I think we even see that existing companies, they start exploring whether they can do things that they already can do just more quickly, because velocity is such an important differentiator in a market where the barrier to creation becomes lower. And again, a Brazilian company by Caio Moretti, Brazilian edtech, they wanted to build a new premium version of their product, and originally would have developed it just with their dev team. And Caio mentioned that it would have taken them a year, and with Lovable, they built it within 2 weeks, I think, and then got it live. And I think it made $3 million in revenue within 48 hours. So I think this shows that there is, maybe not for everyone, but for a lot of companies, there's different paths to think about building products, innovating their product, and using technologies like Lovable to just do it faster. And maybe what that opens is a new appetite for trying things, for taking risks, and for innovating faster. And if some companies do this, then this will probably create pressure on the entire ecosystem for everyone to do it, which I think will only be better will be very positive for the world, for consumers.
And then I was on the Lovable Day event, which was the first Lovable event here in Brazil. And I think what you're mentioning here was really visible there, right? Because most of the audience of the event was composed of entrepreneurs who wanted to validate their business hypothesis, who were creating their business from scratch, and that otherwise would have had to hire an engineer to create their websites or their MVPs. And now they were able to do so by purchasing the token packages, right? Which is a lot cheaper than hiring someone on the market. So I think this Lovable really enables testing their hypotheses and their businesses a lot quicker, and at the same time having so much less to lose. Of course, it will still have other types of investments, but at least this part of the solution will be able to be tested and put into practice a lot quicker. And this is really powerful, right? For the industry development and for innovating on our country, but on the whole world, right? So, which I think is actually really tied to the first thing you said, which is now we are enabling people to solve other types of problems because this part of the problem, which is to code, is kind of solved somehow.
Yeah, and at the same time, there's so much more to do on so many levels. For example, you mentioned that, and this is a very important point, that it is so much cheaper now to go and start solving a problem and to actually solve that problem. I think this is what people sometimes forget, where long term, I hope that we can make Lovable as cheap as possible or even free, because we really want everyone to be able to access this technology and to build and solve problems. Given that we don't own our entire stack, we use other technology that helps us power Lovable, and that's expensive. So we're not there yet, but I think we managed already to reduce the cost that it takes to get something off the ground, to build a product by so much by leveraging this technology. And let's see where we can go. But I think that's what people sometimes forget. And at the same time, we know that this technology is so young, and we launched soon, 1 year ago, into general availability. And today already, it's such a different product than it was 1 year ago. And in 6 months, in 12 months, it will be such a different product than it is right now. So we will continue to push to empower people more and to do more and more quickly, to make sure that it's really everyone who has a good idea can actually turn this into a production ready application and solve a problem that they know they can solve with software.
Yeah, and that's a very important point that we need to highlight. We mentioned some kind of demos and also demos to translate the ideas into visible assets. But that's one use case, and we need to highlight that Lovable and the technology behind it, it's completely capable of doing production-ready applications, not only demos and not only visual mock-ups, but production-ready development, production-ready software. And you just need to go through the demo and the visualization of the mockup. But if you go through that and keep developing, you can really have a kind of a whole development team inside your Lovable application.
100%. And we try to make this as easy as possible for people who have built a product to actually get this out. We always allowed users to publish their app on their own website with pretty much one click. We now have features to optimize security and make sure that all the things that could be vulnerable are being checked by Lovable and help users to ship secure apps. And we also make it super easy to just buy a new domain. And if you're done with your product, you go through our security checker and see if there's anything that needs to be updated. If you use our cloud backend to make sure that all the data is secure, authentication works, every access token that you use is securely stored, and so on. And then you can buy a domain that you want to publish the app under. And within minutes, you have an app that's live and that can get traffic, which is pretty insane compared to how difficult it used to be for a non-developer.
Totally, 100%. And one topic that we need to go through, and I imagine that you have already heard this question lots of time, but it's a good opportunity for you to clarify things as well. Lovable is not a replacement for human labor, and the idea of Lovable is not to replace the development team, but to be a collaborative teammate, let's say, to enhance the capability of this team to create more and to produce more and to generate more value. I would like you to talk a little bit about this topic and to give your definition and your thoughts about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that a lot. If you're a developer, then you don't just spend your time on things that are hard, right? You do a lot of work that is just busy work and that you have to do, or that you could basically do in your sleep. And what role Lovable can take is to help automate a lot of these things that are not the hardest questions to solve, and make sure that you have full time and focus on exactly those problems. The harder a question is, the more complicated it is to solve for AI, obviously, and the longer it will take for AI to become able to compete with an extremely good developer. So even if someone is extremely strong, I think there's so much value of letting that person to focus his or her time only on the things that are really difficult and that really matter, and having the support to take away all of the mind space and the time that would be spent on other things. And then for other people that are not developers, it's to complement their abilities and just let them do more, right? We talked about the product managers, we talked about designers who can do a lot of great work, but then are reliant on a developer to execute what they have planned out. And they're usually handing over their work, and then a developer takes it further. And with tools like Lovable, they can just get much further and do more. So I would say that with this technology, companies can move faster and solve more problems in a short amount of time, and make sure that their people and their best people are really focused on the tough problems to solve, and eliminate the need to solve a lot of the easier tasks.
Totally. I think That's great, and it applies to lots of what we are talking about here in the podcast. The whole AI technology, not only to create software but to use AI as a whole, uh, should be targeted towards this idea that you described today. Like
Yeah.
the idea is to enhance the capability of the teams and not to replace the teams themselves, because
Yeah.
there are such a kind of skill sets on the human capability that are difficult to replace, as we mentioned before. And yeah, the capability of having a team uh, that is completely able to create more through the technology, and they master this technology, is a differentiation on the market that is going to be even more required in
Mm,
the days to come.
absolutely.
And just to keep on our questions here, what do you think would be a good strategy to for companies that are like tasting a little bit of AI, tasting a little bit of the technology? What do you think is a good strategy to start uh, using those kind of technologies like Lovable, and like to creating this taste of how good it
Mhm.
is, and how they can leverage the technology to be more productive and to generate more value? What
Yeah.
would be your recommendation on strategy, and what do you think is a good strategy, if you have some story to tell on companies that were like maybe traditional companies that started using those kind of technologies and were really successful
Yeah.
and created lots of things, not only startups but also big companies that can leverage those kind of technologies as well?
For sure. There's so many ways. I would say there's almost a 3-step process that if I were leading a company or a department in a company, that I would follow. And the first thing is that there will be people in my team and in my company that love this technology. They're interested in giving themselves leverage and like doing things faster and creating value. And there's people who are maybe more anxious or unaware of the possibilities that exist. And one thing that I would do extremely quickly would be to give my team access in some shape or form and encourage for people to try these technologies. And what this does is that there's this general awareness that's being created where people, when they see how a tool like Lovable works, then they start thinking about, okay, now where could this make my life better? Where can this make my output better? And but this is a process that starts. So I think just giving them access and making them aware, super powerful. And that can happen with more guidance and can happen like very, very freely. Connects to the second point, and that is to start being intentional about using technology like Lovable to try to solve problems that can be solved with it. And what we see more and more, we've had this big case with Cognizant, for example, like a big IT company that ran, I think, the world's biggest hackathon internally, where they had their entire team come together and use Lovable to come up with new use cases for like what can we solve. And I think this is something that companies should absolutely do. Once people have had the chance to try Lovable, some will have done it, some will not have done it. There should be competitions, learning sessions, hackathons where either on a company level, on a team level, on a department level, there's some kind of challenge where the goal is to get people to come up with very concrete problems that they think they could solve with a technology like this, and then actually start tackling this. Because what happens is that, number one, it gets teams in this mind space for what is it that we should be solving if we can do more things and can do more things quicker. And it also broadens this horizon of many people to think that they can actually do it themselves. Because if you give a tool to someone who was never able to build something, it's not like they will, like most people won't jump on me like, oh yes, I can finally build something, because they weren't able to. And this takes some unlearning. And processes like this, hackathons, they're quite exciting and engaging and are fun. And that's why I usually like to say that I used to be a consultant, and digital transformations that companies have to go through every few years to stay competitive, those are usually painful and scary. And this is also a digital transformation, but it's one that most people that are part of a company actually find fun. And then once we're at the point where everyone in the company understands, okay, this technology is powerful, I have a sense for how it can make my life, my work better, then it's about really implementing this and giving people the freedom to build their own tools that can help them work faster, work better, work without requiring assistance, and being more independent. And then integrating these tools into core processes to actually, act on these problems that are being discovered during hackathons that can be solved, and just making things reality.
This is super exciting because you were talking about the steps, and I started thinking about when we started using Lovable in Artefact, and we started just by giving people access to it, and showcasing the results that we have had with it in our clients, right? The demos that we built and everything. And it started to create some awareness about the possibilities that the tool allows us. So now I think I receive requests every day, like, Amanda, how can I get access to Lovable? Because I want to build this. And I think now we are reaching the stage where people are like, okay, how can I do this better? Like, how can I know Lovable exists, but how can I give better prompts? How can I build it even like more complete solution? How can I customize this even further to like my client palette or to artifact palette or other things, right? And I think we're kind of at that stage. So I myself am looking for information of how can I prompt better to get even better results and make the most out of the tool. And then I think we're also reaching the step of governance, right? I think lots of people are already using it, and now I need to establish a governance of the tool inside our company because it's really like easy to publish things now. Lots of people are using it. So maybe if you could speak a little bit about how we could establish good governance over Lovable or other tools that you are using inside the company once it is already established,
Yeah, both super important points. Maybe let me start with the capabilities piece, because that is really important and connects to governance, because you want to have good products being built that are worth publishing, that are secure. And Lovable feels extremely intuitive, and it is so much more intuitive than if someone who's non-technical started to try to write a script with Python. But it is still a learned skill. And exactly as you said, now people are asking, okay, how can I learn this? How can I get really, really good at this and build in the right way? And we now see companies that actually require Lovable capabilities in job profiles, for example. I think we'll see more and more of this, because companies want to make sure that if we give people tools that are powerful, then they have a very good sense for what they can do and how they can use them, how they can get the most potential, the full potential out of it. And what I love about Brazil is that it's such a cool ecosystem with people want to learn. People want to get good at things and learn new technology. It's one of the fastest growing markets for us, and was one of the first markets where there was a lot of adoption without us doing any marketing, because people just saw the potential. And this ecosystem where there's a lot of individuals and organizations that help teach people and educate companies, educate individuals, is fantastic. So as a large company, I would rely on either an internal function where I trust that I have people that are extremely good at technology, at AI, to learn Lovable, to build materials that I use to train my teams, or I would rely on partners that I can bring in and help me manage this transformation and help me manage the upskilling. And as mentioned, like people and team leaders will find that their teams find it quite fun, because it's so rewarding that you can do more now. You can go further quicker, and you just have more tools at your disposal. But like, this education component is really important. And it connects with good governance, because the more you can teach standards to what is important when building something. How should I think about data? How should I think about security? That's super, super important. And training the team is, you're probably halfway there to be able to enforce good governance. And now there's probably a lot more questions that companies ask themselves around governance. And it's starting from, okay, when I want to build something externally visible, how do I make sure that the things that we build actually align to our brand and they feel very on brand? There's certain things that we have to build in the product. And this used to be quite hard. And we're working on a lot of solutions to make this very, very easy for companies that use Lovable, that the products that they build actually are on brand and use the same components, design systems, etc. And then there's other questions for, okay, where can data be stored that's in these products? Where's the code stored and so on? And so there's a lot of things that are pretty different between companies right now. And some companies just use our systems and incorporate this into their company infrastructure, that they can use GitHub. They can use the AWS services that we connect to. They can use Supabase and procure that provider as well. But there's also companies that try to fit all these new AI tools like Lovable to work with their existing tools that an environment that they use to keep everything like in the governance that they've set up. And that's something that we're of course exploring for, like, how can we make sure that we enable companies to use this technology and kind of integrate well into the technologies that they're already used to and have established. And some of them we can, and some of them we cannot yet.
Great. So thank you for your answer, Sebastian. I would like to ask you also a little bit of the, like, let's say a future prediction here. What do you think in terms of what we are seeing in the market are the next steps? Like, we have this technology, although it's new, it's already capable of doing great things and generating lots of tangible impact. Do you have some vision on the next steps, on the future? What do you think this technology is going to lead us in the next few, I would say the next few months, because in the next few years it's too difficult to predict.
And maybe I start with the vision for Lovable, and our tagline was that Lovable should be the last piece of software. That can mean many different things, but it should mean that Lovable is the last piece of software that all other software is being developed on. So we want to continuously raise the bar for how complex software can be, that can be and should be developed on Lovable, because it's the fastest and best way to do it. And that's something that we're working super hard on, to make Lovable reliable, to make Lovable understand what do you want to build and guide you along those steps, and just make it as easy as possible and as seamless as possible. And that is one thing. We know that companies are under pressure to build quicker and quicker as they compete with a lot of new entrants and founders that build new products. So, like, we want to help them operate as effectively as possible. And there's already companies that are really focused on ripping out their legacy systems. I think Klarna was quite public when they said they fired Salesforce, quote unquote. And I don't think that's entirely true, but it's maybe almost like a metaphor for them trying to build a future-proof data platform and then building applications on top of this that can change over time, so that we can move away from this cycle of, okay, I'm getting a bunch of applications, I'm building my company operating system, and then I have to rip this out every few years and replace it with whatever is the latest. And that's quite painful, to a world where if you run an operating system and your use case changes, your need changes, you can just change that software without needing to have an army of developers that is always working on changing that. So this is one thing that we want to enable for the enterprise side. And I'm very excited about the enterprise partnerships that we have with companies that start building more and more of their internal tooling on Lovable and experiment with this. And obviously, we want to get them to the point where they feel very confident to run a lot of their stack on Lovable, a lot of these applications on Lovable. And very long term, who knows where the journey will go. It could also be that Lovable becomes the last interface that you ever need to interact with, where you don't actually need to build a range of applications, but you can build whatever application you need in a given moment just through this interface that we provide. That could be a very long-term thing, but I think that's a bit further out.
Perfect. I'm excited to live in this moment when we can do this such extraordinary things. Thank you a lot, Sebastian. It was very nice to chat with you. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your answers. Thank you also, Amanda. You did great here on the questioning also. And yeah, nice to talk to you guys, and see you on the road ahead.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Obrigado,
Bye, guys.
pessoal.
Bye.
Semana que vem tem mais. Até lá. Tchau, tchau.